Welcome back, tennis fanatics. I need you to pause whatever you're doing and lock in, because what just unfolded in the California desert wasn't just an upset. It was a full-scale tectonic shift in the women's game. Under the blazing sun of Indian Wells Open, at the tournament many call the unofficial fifth Grand Slam, a shockwave detonated that could be felt from Almaty to Manila. The script was supposed to be predictable. The top seeds were meant to cruise. The hierarchy was meant to hold. Instead, the desert delivered chaos. The reigning queen of consistency, the world number 3, the ice-cold tactician who started this season by conquering Melbourne, Elena Rybakina, has been eliminated. And not by a fellow heavyweight. Not by a former slam champion rediscovering her magic. She was taken down by a 20-year-old Filipina rising force who refused to accept the storyline written for her. Alex Eala didn't just win. She dismantled expectation. She rewrote reality. She walked into tennis paradise ranked outside the elite circle and walked out having stunned one of the most dominant forces on tour. Let that breathe for a second. This wasn't a lucky day at the office. This wasn't a top seed spraying errors in a momentary lapse. This was tactical dissection under pressure. This was resilience weaponized. Rybakina arrived in California radiating authority. Her serve has been one of the most feared shots in the sport. Flat, explosive, almost unfair in its precision. Her ground strokes cut through courts like lasers. She thrives on early ball striking, suffocating opponents before rallies can even form. After lifting the trophy at the Australian Open earlier this year, she wasn't just winning, she was imposing. Alongside powerhouses like Aryna Sabalenka and Iga Swiatek, she has defined the standard at the top of the tour. She was expected to cruise through the early rounds here. Analysts penciled her into the latter stages before a ball was even struck. But here's the truth about tennis that keeps us addicted. Rankings don't swing rackets. Reputations don't chase down drop shots. And belief. Belief changes everything. From the opening moments, Eala stepped onto that court with something different in her posture. There was no wide-eyed underdog energy. No tentative hesitation. Her movement was sharp. Her focus was surgical. She wasn't there to participate in a spectacle. She was there to dismantle it. The first few games, however, looked exactly how the betting markets predicted. Rybakina unleashed thunder from the baseline. First serves exploded into the corners. Returns were taken early and punished. Within minutes, the scoreboard read 4-0. The atmosphere suggested routine domination. Commentators began discussing potential next-round matchups. But beneath that surface dominance, something subtle was shifting. Eala wasn't unraveling. She wasn't overpressing. She absorbed. She adjusted. Instead of trying to match raw power, she pivoted tactically. She stepped further back on return, giving herself precious milliseconds to neutralize the serve. Her goal shifted from aggression to survival. Just get the rally started. And once the rally began, the pattern transformed. Heavy topspin. High net clearance. Deep placement into the middle third. She forced Rybakina to generate her own pace repeatedly. Those flat, devastating strikes that normally penetrate through opponents suddenly had to deal with higher bouncing, slower rebounding desert conditions. Indian Wells courts are gritty. The ball kicks up. Timing must be precise. Eala exploited that perfectly. The rhythm Rybakina thrives on began to fracture. Forehands drifted long. Backhands clipped tape. The unforced error tally quietly climbed. When Eala secured her first break back, you could feel the temperature in the stadium change. This was no longer a procession. It was becoming a contest. Though Rybakina claimed the opening set 6-3, momentum had tilted. Eala had planted doubt. And doubt is dangerous against a player built on rhythm. The second set revealed the full blueprint. Eala elevated her defensive elasticity to another dimension. Her court coverage became suffocating. She extended rallies beyond comfort. Every point demanded one extra ball. Then another. Then another. And just when Rybakina would settle into baseline exchanges, Eala introduced disruption, the drop shot. Feathered backhand slices landing just over the tape forced the tall Kazakh into awkward forward sprints. Transition movement isn't Rybakina's primary strength, and Eala probed it relentlessly. Push her deep. Draw her wide. Then bring her forward. Over and over. The physical taxation began to show. The serve percentage dipped. The error count ballooned. Meanwhile, Eala's composure only intensified. She broke early. The Filipino section of the crowd erupted. Flags waved. Chants echoed. What began as hopeful support transformed into belief. Rybakina attempted to respond with greater aggression, swinging bigger, aiming closer to lines. But pressing against a player who thrives on redirection can be fatal. Eala's defensive reflexes absorbed the pace and redirected it with interest. She served out the second set 6-4 with clarity and courage, sending the match into a deciding third. And now the desert air felt electric. A heavyweight had been dragged into a dogfight. The world number 3, expected to dominate, now faced a relentless 20-year-old who had decoded her patterns and refused to blink. The match was no longer about power versus promise. It had become a psychological duel. The question shifted from, can Eala compete? To, can Rybakina solve this? And that is where the story truly explodes. Because in tennis, when certainty evaporates and belief takes control, history tends to get written. And what happened next would send the entire tour into conversation. But that, tennis fans, is where we take a breath, because the third set deserves its own spotlight. The third set began with a tension you could physically feel through the screen. The desert sun had shifted, shadows stretching across the stadium court at Indian Wells Open, but the heat inside the arena only intensified. This was no longer about rankings. This was no longer about seedings. This was survival. Elena Rybakina walked off for a brief reset before the decider, attempting to halt the momentum that had turned against her. When she returned, there was a noticeable edge in her body language. Sharper steps, quicker preparation, the look of a champion refusing to surrender her throne. And the opening games reflected that urgency. The serve returned with venom. First deliveries cracked through the air, kissing the lines. Eala was pushed immediately into defensive positions. The first 3 games went strictly with serve, each one fought through extended rallies that felt like mini-battles inside a war. But here's where this match became extraordinary. Every rally was no longer just physical. It was psychological chess. Rybakina tried to reassert dominance by flattening her backhand down the line early in exchanges, attempting to shorten points. Eala anticipated it. She adjusted her court positioning half a step deeper, baiting the strike, ready to counter with heavy cross-court topspin that forced Rybakina into uncomfortable height zones. At 2-2, the games grew longer. Deuce. Advantage. Deuce again. Neither player blinking. The quality was staggering. Winners struck inches from the sideline. Defensive gets that defied physics. The crowd had shifted entirely. What began as curiosity had turned into full investment. Every time Eala chased down a forehand and flicked it back cross-court, the stadium roared. Every time Rybakina found a 115 mph ace under pressure, gasps rippled through the stands. At 3-3, the match reached a boiling point. Eala stepped up to serve and immediately faced 0-30 after 2 blistering returns from Rybakina. This was the moment where champions typically separate themselves. Rybakina smelled opportunity. She stepped inside the baseline, cutting off angles, crushing second serves. Triple break point. The air froze. And this is where Alex Eala transformed from contender to giant slayer. On the first break point, she delivered a heavy kick serve wide that forced a mishit return. On the second, she constructed a 23-shot rally, absorbing pace with elastic defense until Rybakina overpressed a backhand into the net. On the third, she did something audacious. She served and volleyed. Against one of the cleanest returners in the game. On break point. In the third set, the serve dragged Rybakina off the court, and Eala finished with a calm forehand volley into open space. Deuce. The eruption was deafening. That hold shifted everything. You could see it in Rybakina's reaction, a brief stare toward her box, a subtle shake of the head. Pressure had reversed direction. At 4-4, Rybakina faced her own storm. The rallies grew heavier, more punishing. Eala's depth was relentless. She targeted the middle of the court strategically, eliminating angles and forcing Rybakina to generate extreme precision to find winners. And precision under suffocating pressure is fragile. A forehand sailed long. A second serve clipped tape. Suddenly, break point for the Filipina. The exchange that followed felt suspended in time. Rybakina struck an inside-out forehand that would finish almost anyone else. Eala sprinted, slid across the gritty surface, and launched a defensive lob that hung in the desert sky for an eternity. Rybakina positioned underneath it, set her feet, and missed. Net cord. Gasped. 5-4. The mountain had cracked. Now serving for the match, Eala carried the weight of a nation. Every Filipino fan inside that stadium stood. Back home in Manila, alarms had gone off at impossible hours. Screens glowed in living rooms. This wasn't just a tennis match anymore. This was belief manifesting in real time. Rybakina, to her credit, attacked fearlessly in that final game. A return winner down the line. 15-15. A blistering rally finished with a backhand strike. 15-30. The tension was unbearable. But Eala's composure was astonishing. She didn't rush. She didn't retreat. She committed to patterns that had brought her here: heavy topspin cross-court, deep middle drives, calculated aggression on second serves. At 30-30, she delivered perhaps the point of the match. A 26-shot exchange ending with a sudden backhand drop shot that caught Rybakina frozen behind the baseline. Match point. One chance. The serve landed deep to the body. Rybakina returned. The rally built. 3 cross-court exchanges. A direction change. A forehand drive into the corner. Rybakina went for broke down the line, and it sailed inches wide. Game. Set. Match. Alexandra Eala. The reaction was pure release. She dropped to her knees, hands over her face, disbelief and triumph colliding at once. Across the net, Rybakina offered a brief handshake, professional but visibly shaken. Because this wasn't random. This wasn't luck. This was systematic disruption. The statistics told the same story. Rybakina fired aces and produced more outright winners, but her unforced errors climbed into dangerous territory. Eala, by contrast, remained remarkably clean. She won a stunning percentage of points on Rybakina's second serve, turning a traditional weapon into vulnerability. She dictated tempo without overwhelming power. She defended without retreating into passivity. She attacked without recklessness. That balance is rare. This victory doesn't just move her deeper into the draw. It alters perception across the locker room. Players who once viewed her as a dangerous early-round opponent now must consider her a legitimate title threat. And for Rybakina, this defeat stings. She entered as one of the tournament favorites, carrying momentum and confidence. But tennis punishes rigidity. When Plan A falters, adaptability becomes survival. And in this match, adaptability belonged to Eala. The desert delivered more than an upset. It delivered a message. The hierarchy in women's tennis is under pressure. The next generation isn't waiting politely. They are forcing doors open. And Alexandra Eala just kicked one off its hinges. But the story isn't finished. Because with this win, the draw shifts. The expectations shift. The target on her back grows heavier. The question now isn't whether she belongs. It's how far she can go. And that's exactly what we dive into next. Now everything changes. One result in the desert doesn't just remove a top seed from the board, it reshapes the entire landscape of the tournament. With Elena Rybakina out of the picture at the Indian Wells Open, a section of the draw that once looked locked and predictable has been blown wide open. And standing in the center of that opening is Alexandra Eala, no longer the hunter, but suddenly the hunted. That's the twist nobody talks about. Pulling off the upset is one thing. Backing it up is another. The emotional high of defeating a world number 3 can either propel a player into legendary territory or quietly drain them before the next round even begins. Adrenaline is powerful, but recovery is brutal. Nearly 3 hours of tactical warfare under desert heat extracts a cost. The legs feel heavier the next morning. The shoulders tighten. The mind replays every rally. The question now is whether Eala can channel that emotional explosion into sustained precision. Because make no mistake, every remaining opponent has taken notes. Coaches across the tour are dissecting this match frame by frame. They saw the blueprint. Heavy topspin to disrupt rhythm. Relentless depth down the middle to erase angles. Sudden drop shots to expose forward movement. patient rally tolerance under pressure. But knowing the formula and executing it are two completely different things. What made Eala's performance extraordinary wasn't just strategy, it was conviction. She committed fully to the long rallies. She accepted that this would not be a highlight reel slugfest. She embraced the grind. That mindset separates contenders from hopefuls. Inside the locker room, the perception shift is immediate. Players who once viewed her as a talented prospect now see danger. When someone defeats a reigning slam champion on a marquee court, belief becomes contagious. And belief spreads quickly in professional tennis. There is also the ranking impact to consider. Entering the tournament hovering around the edge of the elite tier, this victory injects massive points into her season. A deep run here could push her closer to the top 20, territory that changes scheduling, seedings, and respect. But beyond numbers lies something even more valuable: psychological authority. The next time she stands across from a top 5 player, there will be no intimidation. She has already walked through fire and emerged victorious. For Rybakina, this defeat will demand reflection. Champions don't collapse from one loss, they recalibrate. The power remains. The serve remains. The baseline weapons remain. But adaptability under tactical disruption must sharpen. When an opponent refuses to give pace and forces extended exchanges, patience becomes essential. This loss exposes vulnerability not in skill, but in adjustment speed. And that is fixable. The season is long. The sunshine double continues. Miami awaits. Historically, elite players respond to setbacks with vengeance. Expect a focused, perhaps even more dangerous version of Rybakina when she steps onto the next stage. But today belongs to Eala. And what makes this moment historic isn't just the ranking difference. It's the symbolism. Philippine tennis has never seen a statement this loud on this stage. Young players watching from Manila to Cebu just witnessed proof that global hierarchy can be challenged. That belief matters. Representation matters. When one breakthrough occurs, it alters imagination for the next generation. And tennis thrives on new narratives. The women's tour right now is defined by depth. Power hitters, counterpunchers, tactical masterminds, the styles are clashing weekly. But what Eala demonstrated is that versatility may be the most lethal weapon of all. She can defend without surrendering court position. She can attack without abandoning margin. She can vary spin, height, pace, and pattern mid-rally. That fluidity is modern tennis. The desert conditions amplified her strengths, yes. The high bounce rewarded her topspin. The slower surface extended rallies in her favor. But conditions alone do not defeat a world number 3. Courage does. Execution does. Composure under triple breakpoint in a deciding set does. That service hold at 4-4 will replay in highlight reels for years. Because in that moment, under maximum pressure, she didn't retreat. She escalated. Serve and volley on breakpoint against one of the cleanest returners in the game? That's not recklessness. That's fearless calculation. The aftermath now becomes its own storyline. Can she manage expectations? Can she handle media attention, national celebration, the sudden spotlight? Rising stars often face their toughest challenge not in defeating elites, but in sustaining excellence once the world starts watching closely. The crowd support in Indian Wells was electric, but deeper rounds bring different energy, quieter tension, bigger stakes, heavier consequences. If she maintains the same tactical discipline, heavy to the backhand corner, controlled aggression on second serve returns, patience in neutral rallies, there is no ceiling visible. The draw has opened. The path is real. Momentum in tennis can snowball quickly. One breakthrough win can transform into a semi-final appearance before anyone fully processes what's happening. But recovery is crucial. Hydration, ice baths, strategic rest, mental reset. The body must recover as quickly as the spirit soars. Because the next opponent will not offer emotional space. They will test whether this was a singular eruption or the beginning of sustained arrival. And that is the defining line between upset and evolution. As we zoom out, this match reinforces why this sport remains endlessly compelling. Rankings provide structure, but competition provides chaos. On paper, the result made little sense. On court, it made perfect sense. The better adapted player won. The more tactically flexible competitor prevailed. And now the women's tour buzzes with renewed unpredictability. The hierarchy is not collapsing, but it is being challenged. And challenges fuel greatness. So the conversation shifts to you. Was this the moment a new contender officially announced herself? Does Eala now carry legitimate title credentials? How does Rybakina respond in Miami? Because tennis history often pivots quietly before exploding into legacy. Perhaps we just witnessed the first chapter of something far bigger than one afternoon in the desert. One thing is certain, the script has been torn apart. And the rewrite has only just begun.